What if a silent war is draining billions from the US economy, not with weapons, but with wallets? Canadians are boycotting American goods and travel, hitting 6 states where it hurts most. Stick around, this could reshape how you view your state's future. Hey there, sparks, insight, community. If you're new, hit that subscribe button for more eye-opening stories. Today, we're uncovering a crisis slipping under the radar, one that's threatening the livelihoods of millions. Get ready, this will change how you see the US-Canada relationship. Your state's economy is crumbling not from a war or a recession, but because your northern neighbors have stopped visiting and buying your goods. It sounds like a plot twist, but it's real. In 2025, a Canadian boycott is quietly siphoning billions from 6 US states: Florida, Arizona, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Minnesota. Most people don't even realize it's happening, but the impact is devastating. Let's break it down, state by state, and see why this is more than just a blip on the radar. Florida is synonymous with sunshine and packed beaches, but look closer, and you'll see a different story. Empty hotel lobbies, shuttered beach rentals, and small towns holding their breath. Canadian snowbirds, over 3 million strong last year, poured hundreds of millions into places like Fort Lauderdale and Naples. But in 2025, flights from Canada are down over 70%, and bookings have tanked. Take Sarah, a hotel owner in Miami. She told us her reservations are down 60%, forcing her to lay off half her staff. She's not sure she can keep the doors open. In tourist-heavy counties, local governments are bracing for budget cuts as tax revenue dries up. If this boycott persists, Florida could face a financial storm rivaling the Great Recession. When the visitors vanish, the economy doesn't just slow, it chokes. Arizona thrives on its desert charm, drawing nearly 1 million Canadian snowbirds annually, who spend over $775 million. But this year, the desert feels emptier. RV parks are half full, restaurants are closing early, and towns like Yuma and Glendale are reeling. Maria, who runs a diner in Phoenix, says her Canadian customers used to fill every table in winter. Now, she's lucky to see a handful, and her bills are piling up. Flights from Canada are down 70%, and the boycott is gaining steam. Arizona's economy, with nearly 10% tied to tourism, faces a potential collapse. No Canadians means no customers, which means layoffs, less tax revenue, and struggling cities. In rural areas, there's no backup plan. Michigan shares more than a border with Canada, it's an economic lifeline. The state exports over $27 billion in goods to Canada each year, more than to any other country, with the auto industry at its core. But in 2025, trade volume has dropped 12%. Canadian manufacturers are pausing contracts with Michigan suppliers, shelving projects, and scrapping hiring plans. In Detroit, Tom, a factory worker, says orders from Canada have been cut in half. He's worried about his job. Small towns like Port Huron, where Canadian dollars once flowed freely, are hurting. Gift shops and restaurants report fewer visitors, and revenue is plummeting. Detroit's fragile recovery could stall if this continues. The trust that kept trade seamless is fraying, and Michigan is feeling the cracks. Indiana, the heart of the Midwest, seems solid with its factories and farms. But Canada, its largest trading partner, buys nearly $12 billion in goods annually, from auto parts to soybeans. This year, exports are down 9%. Manufacturing, employing 1 in 5 Hoosiers, is taking a hit. John, a machine shop owner in Elkhart, lost 3 major Canadian contracts this month. He's not sure how long he can stay afloat. Canadian firms in Quebec and Ontario are sourcing from Europe or going local, leaving Indiana's factories with cancelled orders and reduced shifts. Farmers are struggling too, with grain cooperatives reporting lower demand. In towns like Terre Haute, where one plant can make or break the economy, the ripple effects are real. Indiana's resilience is being tested. Illinois, anchored by Chicago, is a trade powerhouse. Canada buys over $16 billion in goods yearly, over 25% of the state's foreign trade. But in 2025, exports are down 11%. Manufacturing, from machinery to electronics, is slowing. Agriculture, with Illinois as the nation's second-largest corn producer, is hit hard. Canadian imports of corn and soybeans are down 13%. Sarah, a farmer in Bloomington, says her exports to Canada dropped 20%, forcing her to take loans to keep her farm running. Logistics hubs like the Port of Chicago are seeing fewer shipments to Ontario and Quebec. Businesses are losing confidence, scaling back investments, and slowing hiring. In cities like Springfield, tax revenues are shrinking just as costs rise. This isn't just a dip, it's a slow unraveling. Minnesota prides itself on a steady economy, from medical giants to farming roots. Canada, its top trade partner, bought over $11 billion in goods in 2024. But this year, exports are down 9%. Manufacturers in Rochester and Stady Cloud are cutting shifts, and some are laying off workers. Mike, a pork processor near Stady Cloud, is diverting shipments to Mexico at a loss to stay afloat. Farmers face unsold grain, and the Port of Duluth is handling fewer loads to Canada. In small towns, people are whispering, "Why is business so slow? Why is the plant on a 3-day week?" It's not a collapse yet, but Minnesota's export-heavy economy, 1 in 6 jobs tied to trade, could face a silent recession if this boycott deepens. Why is this happening? It's not random. In early 2025, the US imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. Citing national security, Canada retaliated with its own tariffs, but the real spark was political rhetoric. Comments from the US about Canada becoming the 51st state ignited outrage. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau urged citizens to choose Canada, fueling a grassroots boycott. Apps like Buy Beaver and Maple Scan help Canadians avoid US products, and 91% of Canadians want less reliance on the US, per recent polls. This isn't just economics, it's a fracture in trust, and these 6 states are paying the price. But here's what most miss. This isn't a temporary blip, it's a chain reaction threatening entire communities. Let's dive into the numbers to see the scale of this crisis, and why it's not going away soon. In Florida, Canadian tourists spent over $3 billion last year. A 70% drop in flights could mean a $2.1 billion loss in 2025, like losing a major industry overnight. Hotels are empty, and small businesses are on the brink. In Arizona, the $775 million from Canadian visitors is evaporating, with RV parks at 30% capacity and clinics cutting staff. Michigan's $27 billion in exports to Canada faces a $3.2 billion hit from a 12% trade drop, threatening 180,000 jobs. Indiana's $12 billion in exports is down 9%, a $1.08 billion loss, shaking its manufacturing core. Illinois' $16 billion in exports sees a $1.76 billion shortfall, impacting farms and logistics. Minnesota's $11 billion in exports is down 9%, a $990 million loss, hitting 1 in 6 trade-related jobs. This isn't just about numbers, it's about people. Sarah in Florida, Maria in Arizona, Tom in Michigan, John in Indiana, Sarah in Illinois, and Mike in Minnesota are real faces of this crisis. Their businesses and livelihoods are at stake. The boycott, fueled by apps and social media, is a consumer-led movement with deep roots. A March 2025 Nielsen survey found 1/3 of Canadians are fully boycotting US goods, choosing Canadian lettuce over American, even if it costs more. It's a cultural shift, amplified by anger over US policies. Think of this like a dam breaking slowly. At first, it's just a trickle, fewer tourists, canceled orders. But as the cracks widen, the flood comes: layoffs, closed businesses, strained budgets. Historically, boycotts have caused havoc. The 1973 Arab oil embargo crippled the US economy with gas shortages. The 2003 US boycott of French goods hurt French exporters. But this Canadian boycott is different. It's between allies, making the betrayal sting more. It's like a family feud where one side stops showing up to dinner. The question is, How do we stop the flood before it's too late? Imagine a future where this boycott doesn't let up. In Florida, empty beaches lead to shuttered businesses, soaring unemployment, and falling property values. A recession looms as local governments slash services. Arizona's small towns, reliant on snowbirds, could become ghost towns, with real estate markets stalling and growth halting. Michigan's auto industry could falter, derailing Detroit's comeback. Indiana's factory towns like Elkhart could lose their economic anchors. Illinois' farms and logistics hubs could grind to a halt. With Chicago's port idling, Minnesota could face a silent recession, with unsold grain and empty factories rippling across communities. But there's hope. Diplomacy could mend this rift. Negotiations to ease tariffs and restore trust are critical, but they take time. These states can diversify, seeking new markets in Europe or Asia, though that's a long-term fix. Promoting domestic tourism, encouraging Americans to visit Florida's beaches or Arizona's deserts could cushion the blow. But these solutions aren't quick, and the pain is immediate. What can you do? Stay informed. Global trade affects your local economy, whether you're in Miami or Minneapolis. Support local businesses in these states, they're fighting to survive. As a voter, push for policies that strengthen international ties. This boycott shows how fast things can unravel when trust breaks down. This crisis is a wake-up call. Our economies are intertwined, and a fracture in one hurts all. If this opened your eyes, like, share, and subscribe for more stories that matter. Comment, I'm in, below to join the conversation on navigating these turbulent times. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.